Hey guys, I'm
Hello,
Bailey, aka Shadeblade57.
and Telly.
Telly.
You know us from, well, Shadeblade's channel,
Yay!
and we're here to bring you the Walking Chicken podcast.
Yep,
It's a new initiative by both of us. Um, Talk about games, gaming, and, well, I guess visual culture, and I guess some
pretty
written
much
culture as
whatever the
well,
hell
but
we want to
yeah,
talk about.
things that interest us.
Yeah, but before we get started, I want to give a shout out to my one subscriber in Qatar, or Qatar?
It's Qatar.
Qatar? Okay.
In English, it's pronounced Qatar.
Yeah, figured out recently, half a subscriber in Qatar, so yeah, shout out to that guy. I didn't even know your country existed till I found you.
That's a little harsh.
In all honesty, I didn't.
That's fair. Yeah.
I'd never heard of it. It never came up in like crap. What would that course in school be called?
Geography.
Yeah, that's the one.
Well, to be fair, it's a pretty small country.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bigger than Bahrain, but it's still small,
Hmm.
playing on regional rivalry there to, curry favor. Anyway,
Okay.
so
Hmm?
big news of the recent week.
Well, I'd say the
Bethesda
biggest
is,
one is with Bethesda
yeah, that's what I was going to say. Bethesda is
doing
going in a
shit.
new direction. Yeah,
Well, I mean, what? Recently, we've had the announcement of 3 new DLCs for Fallout 4. They just announced they're working on 3 new things, apparently. So, that they haven't done before.
yeah, they're apparently going in a new direction, which is interesting because Bethesda has really, with the exception of Dishonored a few years ago, which they produced, they didn't like actually make, just produced it.
Yeah.
They haven't done much outside their little box.
Yeah, I
So it's
mean,
interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what IPs they're going with because they didn't. I don't think they've ever actually originated an IP that has been popular in recent memory. Because I know
yeah,
they got
Bethesda,
Fallout from
no, like
Obsidian.
they've been riding the Fallout and Elder Scrolls pretty much for the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, it, yeah, because they got. But what are they going to do? They got Fallout from Obsidian, and I think they got Elder Scrolls from somewhere else, but I'd have to look that up. So they don't have much experience in creating new IP.
Yeah. Either way, it'll be interesting to see what they come up with. I mean, I'm
Certainly,
excited
certainly.
for the Fallout 4 stuff, man, because I play that a lot.
Yeah, well, Fallout 4 was a solid game,
Oh yeah,
which I have not had the pleasure of playing at all. So I look forward to eventually being
yeah.
able to do that at some point.
Well, you had a unique theory with the 3 new announcements thing. Um, with
Oh yeah,
them remaking the original Elder Scrolls games, so Fallout games.
yeah. Well, that seems like like the not say the most possible, the most possible, but it would be the most interesting outcome
Yeah.
because
And a remake is something they've never done before. Like I don't honestly think it'll be a new like Elder Scrolls 6 cuz
yeah,
they've done Elder Scrolls games before, but they haven't done a remake before.
yeah. And not only a remake, I'm thinking back to stuff like Elder Scrolls High Rock, like the really,
Oh yeah.
really old-looking isometric um, Elder Scrolls games, where they could definitely use a graphical reboot, and they could make the story a little more contained and essentially edit it all down so it's
Better than
more polished.
find the pieces of the magical MacGuffin staff.
Isn't that what every fantasy game is? It's at its very heart. Find the pieces of the magical MacGuffin.
Pretty much in any case.
Yeah,
There's at least one point in like every fantasy game where you just have to find pieces of something and it's like, yeah, and that's going to help you save the world.
yeah. Because I mean, if you think about what they said, Fallout, not Fallout. Bethesda said they were going in a different direction. They didn't say they were going to create new IPs. They said they were going to try things they haven't done.
Yeah,
So
which could be new IP, could be. I like your theory of the remake because it would make sense.
yeah, it's something in their wheelhouse.
Yeah, it's something they're
Um,
used to, something they know they can do and do well. But in the end, we'll have to wait and see. I do
yeah,
want a remake though. If they remake all the original Elder Scrolls, at least the first one, I'm gonna go play it.
yeah. Well, uh, the the first one was actually they're probably not going to remake that because it was like really not that great.
Mm-hmm.
But I just pulled up a list of some of the stuff that they've done before, and yeah, they don't really originate new IPs. Like that is that is the other thing they could be doing.
Yeah.
They don't really originate new IPs. Um, the last time they did that was like in the late '80s, really,
Mm-hmm.
because they used to be. Apparently, they were the people who started the Madden franchise.
Really? They started
Yes,
Madden?
they started Madden and then they sold it to EA.
Sheesh.
Yeah, imagine an alternate universe where that didn't happen.
Bethesda.
Bethesda makes shitty sports games and EA makes Fallout.
Is it bad that I just thought of like a first person Madden game where you could just say screw the game, walk off, and steal everyone's shit in the locker room?
Now we know exactly what they're doing. That is what they're doing.
Nice.
That only makes sense.
One thing I actually thought about like the other day with the new IP things, like if they make sort of a Fallout or Elder Scrolls style, but just modern day,
Mhm.
like where you're just sort of wandering around, but you can say screw it to your job and just and you can freely steal people's stuff. But I think that might be a little too much GTA
Yeah,
slash. It might get people to
it's a little, yeah, it's
uh
a little too much GTA. It's also a little
it
reminiscent of
seems more like a mix
Watch Dogs.
of it. The idea seems more of like GTA meets Second Life meets just stealing people's shit in real life.
Yeah, I can see you I can see the idea. I just can't see the market for it
Yeah,
essentially because it's it sounds a lot like Watch Dogs, GTA, um, you know
hmm
the sort of what have you open world games, the Division. It sounds a lot like those kind of games, and that's not really what Bethesda does.
yeah,
Bethesda does like I'll say this: as much as it is fun to speculate, it does bring us back around to a sort of another question. If Bethesda's talking about things they don't doing things they don't usually do, starting three new projects that are the kind of things they don't usually do. Um, but what does Bethesda usually do? What are they good
yeah.
at? What are they? I think that's the more relevant question because
They've
it's
proved to be fairly
so
good at
early
just
today.
open world games. So I mean, if unless they're like really taking a step in a different direction,
Yeah,
you probably can expect something open world because
but
that's something Bethesda does extremely well.
yeah, well they have the leaders in open world.
Pretty much, yeah.
I mean, who makes GTA? Was it?
Rockstar.
I should know that.
You
I
probably
should know
should.
that. They're based on the other side of the country. I should know that.
Yeah.
They're based where I went to university, or in the same city.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I showed you pictures when I was in
Oh
university of
right, yeah,
Rockstar's
that's
headquarters.
right. You did show
Yeah,
me pictures.
because yeah, they're just based in Edinburgh,
Yeah,
which
they.
is surprising. But anyway, um, like they're they do open world, but they do only exactly one kind of open world.
Yeah, and
Where,
it's usually like one city or or a city in the area surrounding a city.
well, no, it's not even that. It's that there's only one style of environment they do.
Yeah.
It's this sort of urban environment.
Yeah.
Bethesda Bethesda can do is good at and being able to do multiple styles of environment.
Yeah.
They can move beyond the square mile of English countryside that they always reuse in Elder Scrolls to post-apocalyptic wasteland for Fallout, on and on and on.
Wait,
They did do,
was Bethesda the one who originally had the Doom IP? Because I know they're making the new Doom, but did they originally have it?
no,
No? Oh.
no, Doom was someone else.
Has Bethesda ever made anything that's exclusively theirs and they haven't sold it or...
That was the point I was making earlier. Bethesda doesn't really do new IP.
Oh. Well, they could come up with something.
Yeah, but what?
Uh,
They
y-
have, as I said, they
Yeah.
basically came up with Madden in the '80s, and now, you know, because they again they got Fallout from Obsidian,
Yeah. Well,
and they got
Obsidian's now like a part of them, but
yeah, well, that's how they got it, I think.
they just bought out the company. They didn't buy the rights to make the game. They just bought the company that makes it.
Yeah, like Elder Scrolls is kind of like good EA.
Mm-hmm.
Um, no, actually, no, they did come up with Elder Scrolls.
They did?
Yeah, they did do Elder Scrolls back in the first one was Elder Scrolls Arena back in 1994.
Okay.
So that would be the most recent IP they initiated. Because
Jeez. Elder Scrolls
yeah,
Arena.
yeah. Well, it was way back when.
I want to look up this game.
Because yeah, because for example, they published Rage,
Oh
but
yeah,
they didn't develop it. They publish um, Fallout games. They didn't develop it. They published Dishonored. They didn't develop it. So what exactly are they going to do?
yeah. They tend to be more of a publisher instead of a
Yeah,
stuff. And I'm looking at images of Elder Scrolls Arena right now, and holy crap, that's old.
yeah. Now you see why I said that it would be interesting to do a remaster of
Yeah,
the old Elder Scrolls games.
yeah. They'd essentially have to do it from the ground up. Like they can loosely take the story, but I mean, they're essentially gonna have to remake the entire thing.
Yeah, now you see why I said it would be interesting to see them do that. Like go back, revisit, remake some of their old games.
Yeah, it would be cool though.
Yeah, because come on, those blocky graphics in 3D.
Oh,
Yeah, this is even before they had. I think before they had all the what is the word? Before they had all the traditional like Elder Scrolls trappings of
yeah,
the various types of elf and the various types of.
yeah.
I think there's even
All
like
the races like the dark elves, high elves, wood elves,
I think
Imperials, Nords, crap, what are the others? Khajiit, Argonian, Breton, Redguard, I think that's all of them.
yeah, yeah. This was the I think the last Elder Scrolls game, or the only Elder Scrolls game where you could actually visit every province of the Empire,
Mm-hmm.
because they had every province of the Empire um,
Well,
inside.
I've been saying for a long time, like, I want an Elder Scrolls game that uses the entire map of Tamriel, but it's like, like, with the scale for
Well, they
each
can, yeah,
one,
they
like, keep Skyrim the same size as in the game, but that's gonna be a huge game.
yeah.
Like, that's what I want, but
That's what everyone wants.
they might not, it might not ever happen because of the sheer size.
Well, yeah, no shit.
Bethesda's extremely good at making big maps, but I mean,
There's only so at that point you're limited by processors.
oh yeah.
Yeah, like that's getting beyond map making ability and into technological issues.
That's like you need to buy the highest end system, wait for the next upgrade to come out, and upgrade it. Then you can play it on the minimum graphics.
Yeah,
Powerful. It's
that's that's power.
yeah. It's
Speaking of technological issues, one th- one thing that you had you had been talking about for a while before we started this podcast
Oh,
was VR.
oh, right, yeah. V
Yeah,
VR, like,
the
well, it's
the,
coming
the
out
new
this
glut of
year. I can say
yeah
that.
the new glut of virtual reality.
Yeah, Sony's got the glove, which everyone's just equating to the Power Glove of old.
I know that's the same. I think I had the same thought everybody had when I saw it.
Yeah,
Isn't that just like
it, it
an old
it'll
Power
be
Glove?
interesting to see if modern technology can make the Power Glove work. That's really the only question on everyone's mind when they hear about that. Is can modern
Yeah.
technology make it work? And then you got Oculus versus Steam VR, which what was this?
Well, that's the thing. It's not a Steam. It's not a Steam VR. It's a. I don't know if it's Vive or Vive. It's by
I
H.
think it's
It's by.
the Sony
It's by
had the
H.
Vive, so I think it's the VO.
No. Uh. It's by HTC. The Steam one you're thinking of is by HTC. They're doing it in conjunction with Valve. It's not
Okay.
Steam related. They're using Valve for some of the software integration, but the hardware is all HTC, and it's going to be marketed as an HTC product.
Yeah. Well, look at the price
Which
for the two of them. I mean, the Oculus is like what 800, and the HTC thing is like 600. And really, the specs to
you mean
run it, you
the
need a pretty decent system with. But literally, the only difference in the specs to run it is the Oculus wants 8 gigs of RAM versus the HTC wants 4 gigs of RAM.
and yeah, there we're getting into the I think well
But then
the
you,
context essentially the context is that people are we're starting to get to the point where people are saying that this is going to be the year of VR.
yeah.
I don't think that's going to be the case.
No, I don't think VR is really gonna take off till next year. Yeah, Oculus is boasting
No, I don't
that
think
they
VR is
have.
actually going to take off at all.
Uh, but
But
I know Oculus is boasting that they have like 70 games versus HTC's like 12 initial games. But even still, if you look at the usability for the both of them, I mean, the HTC is probably gonna get a lot more games in the long run because of the partnership with Valve. And then
actually, I think it's going to be Sony that's going to have the game base. If anybody comes out of this being able to make not a functional VR, a sellable VR, a merchandisable VR, it's going to be Sony.
yeah,
That being said, I don't think it's going to work out for them because
well, depends.
it requires a sort of set of market conditions that
Yeah,
are not that are not that don't exist right now.
and if
Um,
it's anything like the HTC thing, it's like it. I can't see too much of a use for it because you might know or might not know this, but like the HTC one requires an open space of 15 foot by 15 foot.
yeah,
It's that's huge. It's bigger than like the Kinect once, I mean, and bigger than anything else. Whereas the Oculus, you can sit in a chair and hold a controller.
yeah.
So I see like that the HTC is more virtual reality than the Oculus, but how many people are gonna keep a 15 foot by 15 foot empty space in their house
Yeah,
or
and
apartment or
that's,
like
that's part of
depending
the issue.
on where you live
That
room like that automatically limits the market.
well, the problem is that's not even the only issue with the market. It's the market is essentially, and while I was doing research for this because I haven't been keeping up with VR developments, I'm less of a first-person gamer than
Hmm.
Jadeblade over there, but um, essentially there's you can play almost any sort of game on a console. You can play almost any sort of game on a PC.
Yeah,
Can't really play any sort of game on a VR.
no, it
That's where
essentially
that's where
has to be first person view.
not yeah, essentially. But that's where the issue comes in because you're not competing for the market. You're not competing for the video game market. You're competing for a slice of the video game market.
Yeah,
And on top of that, there are a great number of first-person games where this kind of technology wouldn't really work that well.
Oh yeah, like
Go on.
I personally, well, back to Bethesda, I don't think an Elder Scrolls game would work VR.
Yeah, no.
Maybe a Fallout, but not an Elder Scrolls.
Yeah, because they've got a certain aesthetic.
Yeah.
So, and I can't see Bethesda on top of it. If you on top of it, I got this point from actually watching a an interesting video by fellows called Extra Credit.
Okay.
They do game content on YouTube. They're brilliant about it. The point they made is that you can't simultaneously optimize a game for VR and non-VR.
Yeah.
So if you optimize for VR, you're inherently limiting your market.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't optimize for VR, you're also inherently limiting your market because if you don't optimize for VR, games don't work that well on them.
Yeah.
I was reading an article discussing the sort of physical technical limitations of VR, that you need to have a certain visual fidelity and a visual frame rate
Yeah.
to simply avoid motion sickness. That doesn't.
Well, that was like the big thing with the dev kits of the Oculus, was like people were getting them and just getting sick from them.
Yeah.
Because, well, you try to use them and you end up getting yourself motion sick because you're seeing something, but you're not in that environment. It just screws up your brain.
There's a massive amount of physical trickery that goes on in the eye that makes a video work. That makes simply a series of moving images blur together to become a picture.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder to do that in a virtual reality style environment.
Yeah.
It's sort of like uncanny valley for the nerves. It gets so realistic that your nerves can't handle it and your brain goes all haywire.
Yeah, which is why I agree that it probably won't end up taking off the way companies want. That being said, AR, when would...
Actually, I'll pause you there. I want to pause you there because there's something relevant with that too. It won't take off in the ways that the companies want. And because of that, because it won't take off in the ways the company wants, it won't take off in the ways that consumers want.
Mm-hmm.
Because consumers have been sold a certain vision of VR.
Yeah.
And I want to quote an Ars Technica headline. People will fall for it like a drug, says game devs on the future of VR. And then they go on to say, where is it? The hype around VR has been building to a relentless, deafening pitch for years. Now, granted, that's one article, but it sort of brilliantly sums up the way VR is being sold. We're being sold the holodeck from Star Trek, and we're not going to get that, not in a million years.
No way. As soon as I first heard about VR, I was like, hey, that's a cool idea. I'm wondering if they'll be able to implement it right. And it's looking like they missed the mark on it. Like, they're not gonna hit it.
I don't think so. It's so much that they've missed the mark. They've misaimed the mark.
Okay.
They haven't painted the target correctly, because the target they've painted is sort of this image of, oh, it's going to be the holodeck.
Yeah.
They can implement VR correctly, but nobody will buy it if it doesn't live up to their expectations. These companies don't just create the technology, they also create the expectation around the technology. There's sort of a circular dialogue going on. How to explain this without sounding pretentious? In Marxist thought, there's an idea called the dialectic. The synthesis, or the thesis, the synthesis, and the antithesis. I got that wrong. Everybody's going to laugh at me now. The thesis, the antithesis, and the synthesis. It's how you create ideas. You begin with a statement. Its opposite opposes it,
Uh-huh.
and then together they form a new third idea, and the cycle repeats.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what game developers have fallen prey to. That they've put up this thesis of VR
Mm-hmm.
as as holodeck,
Which we both know
and
is not going to be.
yeah, and then they're gonna get sort of hit that brick wall of it's not holodeck because they've created this expectation, they've created this like circular expectation of it's going to be holodeck, and therefore it's not. And when they fail to hit that, they're going to have to come up with a new a new way of doing things, and I don't think that's what they're prepared for. I
Yeah.
think they're going to hit the brick wall there. They're going to stumble on the synthesis, and I think it's their fault for painting. I mean, I say it's their fault. I think it's their fault for painting VR as holodeck.
Yeah.
If they painted it as immersive gaming experience, if they painted it as um, like 3D movie, 3D like 3D cinema for gaming, there would have been sort of a really different expectation. But
Yeah, well,
because
like,
they've created this
there are
expectation,
VR
there's
games. Sorry to interrupt you.
yeah,
There
go
are
on.
VR games that have done really well with the VR setup. Like, if you look at, I don't know if you've heard of Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's a really good game. Like, because one person has a VR and they only what they see is just a room with a bomb in it with a bunch of different modules, and the other person's literally with a manual trying to help and talk them into how to disarm the thing.
Yeah.
So that
Well,
that I think is a good example of a VR game and use of VR. But I mean, what?
the thing is, I think the expectations around it will lead developers to design differently
Yeah.
because everything is dialogue.
Hmm.
Everything is dialogue, um, and dialogue creates expectations, and expectations limit. They don't limit creativity, but they limit creative horizons.
Yeah.
You're aiming for the horizon you think people want, and you think you can achieve based on what people want. So I think they're going to aim for something that VR isn't good for, and I think they need to step back and go into the dialectic and try and figure out what VR is good for on its own merits,
Yeah.
as opposed to a Star Trek, as opposed to like being having this sort of uh, tyranny of Star Trek almost, which is a contradiction in the ideas. But I mean, this tyranny of Star Trek, where there's going to be a holodeck, and it's going to be like this, and it's going to be like that, and it's going to be amazing, and everybody's going to love it. And then people buy an Oculus Rift for what?
800 for the
Yeah,
Oculus.
like yeah, $800, and
Which, I mean, if you're
they
living
don't. Yeah,
in on your own and like working full time, odds are, unless you have a bunch in your savings, you're not gonna be able to afford that thing right away.
yeah. Like I've seen VRs, I've seen VRs advertised for 600 or £700,
Hmm.
which is $1,400.
Yeah, it's
Nobody in their right mind is going to spend a month's wages on a VR headset.
yeah, like especially since there's not a lot going for it at the moment.
Yeah, but the problem is that I mean, if nobody buys it, what's the incentive to develop for it? So then
Exactly.
we get back to that point of if nobody's developing for it, or if nobody's buying it, and what's the incentive to develop for it when you can optimize for a different system and therefore increase profits like that?
Hmm.
Capitalism will kill the VR,
Pretty
and
much.
I don't think that there's anything wrong with that really.
Yeah,
It's an
VR.
interesting technology.
Yeah,
It's an interesting technology that didn't pan out.
yeah, it's a good idea, but that's in the end what it ends up just being was an idea.
Yeah,
It didn't work well in practice. maybe later on they can, like years from now, they can actually do a full-on like holodeck, but like what they were boasting. But not now. It's too early.
Yeah, they're not going to deliver in the economics, or they're not going to deliver on the vision, and the economics don't support it.
Hmm.
So, I mean, as much as we'd like it to happen, I think a lot of this debate about, I think we have to be very careful about the debate about VR because a lot of it is, as we've said, relatively overblown.
hmm And personally, with the Oculus, because it's being developed now by Facebook, it's like it
Oh yeah,
it will
no.
auto have like Facebook into it. Like, how are you gonna use social media from a VR perspective? That
Actually,
never made sense to me.
actually, that right there kills it for me. I'm never going to buy an Oculus Rift
Yeah,
because
that's sort of what
I,
killed it
I
for me
cannot
too,
stand.
because you have to use Facebook with it. It's like, why?
Yeah, well, I can't stand Facebook's predatory anti-consumer business practices.
Hmm.
Like it's
That being said, for
Facebook is the liberal democratic Gestapo.
yeah,
Like Facebook is the Gestapo of the 21st century, and that killed it for me.
well then there's the other side of the coin right now is AR, augmented reality, with like the Microsoft HoloLens.
See, that's where the interesting developments are coming in.
Yeah, because that looks genuinely interesting to me.
Yeah.
Other than
Well,
it's sort
augmented.
of big and bulky right now, but I'm pretty sure they're gonna make it a little smaller. But in the end, what do you expect?
Well, I've got two words. I've got two words in response. Google Glass.
Oh God,
I
that
mean, yeah.
that looks so dumb.
Well, no, that's an example of how the technology can, like, the technology exists to make it to make small AR systems.
Hmm. But
I
even
mean,
Google Glass didn't even come close to sort of the things uh HoloLens at least showing on the website can be done with it.
yeah. Well, that's also because Google had sort of a very specific vision about how Google Glass was going to work,
Yeah,
and then they kind of pushed that vision too hard
yeah.
with their like a closed beta for Google Glass, trying to create artificial scarcity, and
Hmm.
eventually people lost interest because
That and Google
if you can't
Glass
buy
sort of
a
became like
Google
this
Glass,
big
why
hipster
would you care?
thing.
Yeah.
Those glass holes.
Oh,
I love that name.
glass holes. Yeah.
But in the end, I'm genuinely interested in the HoloLens because it seems neat. Like, it seems like you can look at an empty wall and a bunch of apps pop up and you can go from there while still being able to look and do stuff in real life.
Mhm. Yeah. Uh,
The only
plus
thing is, at
augmented.
this
Plus,
point, I wouldn't get a dev kit because they're still huge and bulky and.
yeah. On top of it, to a certain extent, augmented reality also kind of gels with our vision as a society of the future.
Mm-hmm.
Like, have you ever seen the TV show The Expanse?
No, I haven't.
Oh well, there's a massive amount of alternate reality, or not alternate reality, augmented reality stuff in that program,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very easy to like it's a believable augmented reality,
Okay.
and even then that's sort of at the limits of what of our depictions of augmented reality, and it still makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's what the technology we have can achieve the effects we believe it should, and that's when developing for entertainment purposes. I think that's one of the key things that needs to be thought about, whether or not the technology we have cannot just achieve it's cannot just achieve promise on its own terms, but whether or not it can achieve the vision that people have for it.
Yeah. And I mean, I can't see HoloLens as like a gaming system. Like maybe some like
No,
phone games, but
well, yeah,
like not a
but I think the
full-on
potential.
gaming platform.
I think the potential is there for something. It's not a gaming platform, but there's a potential there for something more interesting.
Yeah. It it could definitely change the way we view the world and
Oh yeah, all the usual sci-fi platitudes.
yeah.
Anyway, also interesting. Also, an interesting rumor coming out of the Battlefield 5
Oh yeah.
development that it might be set during the First World War.
S-
I'd like to hear Shadeblade's thoughts on that first.
I want a Vimy Ridge battle. I don't think it'll work. Mainly
Yeah,
because I've played Battlefield 3 and stuff like that. You expect it to be very fast paced, action oriented combat. World War One? If you've ever read any books on World War One or anything, like I've barely touched on World War One. World War Two is more my thing. I'll admit that,
yeah,
but it's a lot. Trench warfare is a lot slower combat wise than what people are expecting.
yeah. Well,
That being said, I
that's the
still
key.
want a Vimy Ridge fight.
Oh yeah, no, the Vimy Ridge or the Fourth Battle of Arras for our non-Canadian viewers
Yeah.
is would be really cool. In fact, I think it's actually one of the few battles that you could do as
Hmm.
a Battlefield style game. Actually, the most I'll explain what I think you can do, and then I'll explain why I think the rest of World War One doesn't work. I think the most interesting thing they could do would be to set it on the Eastern Front, where Russia is fighting Germany and Austria, and then ultimately Russia is fighting Russia in the Russian Civil War.
Okay.
Because those are battles of maneuver. They're sort of the Battle of I think it's called the Masurian Lakes, for example. It's
Hmm.
the soldiers are moving around. They're not pinned down and stuck like they are on the Western Front.
Yeah.
There's there's flexibility in, and you can portray movement. I think that's the key to first-person shooters.
Yeah. I mean, some people argue that like they can do a World War One game because Battlefield started off with World War Two, but there's a huge difference between
Yeah,
one and two.
yeah. Here's the
Like,
issue with
who's ever saying that
World War.
does not know history at all.
Yes, it's not even that they do not know history; they don't understand
Hmm.
how and why a first-person shooter works the way it does.
Yeah.
Because I want to go into some World War II and World War One comparative military history for a moment.
Okay.
Spoilers, I have a postgrad in history, so this is going to get kind of
Yeah,
involved.
he's kind of gonna take over this topic.
Yeah, all right. So we kind of have to redefine some terms first.
Hmm.
Strategic and tactical.
Okay.
No single first-person shooter in recent memory, except for Rise, Son of Rome, has actually featured tactical gameplay.
Yeah, not really.
Because,
I mean, you can.
no, because refers to a specific tactical refers to a specific um, level of warfare. It is the small unit warfare. Almost by definition, you cannot have tactical warfare as a single player, and that's
Yeah.
where it falls down. Same with strategic. People will argue, for example, Halo has strategic gameplay. Those people are obviously talking out of their
Yeah.
ass
I
because
think the closest thing to it for like most modern shooters has been the Rainbow Six series, like where you can actually
actually, yeah,
foresee.
Rainbow Six is a great example of
Yeah,
tactical.
where you can tell your squad to like breach from two different angles and
Yeah. Now, here's why first-person shooters work really well. Now that we understand sort of what tactical is,
hmm
here's why World War II is the one of the best settings for first-person shooters. Because in World War II style armies, and I'm going to talk about the British Army because it's the one I know the best
yeah.
about. Um, in a World War II style British Army,
hmm
assets were deployed at the tactical level, or, and assets were designed for the tactical level. So a British squad or section in the First World War
hmm
commanded at the platoon level. So the platoon commander was trying to move his sections around, and that was the sort of heavy weight of the action. Most of the actual action was going on at the platoon level.
hmm
and then translated into physical movement at the squad level.
Okay.
So therefore, weapons were allocated at the squad level. So a British squad would have a machine gun section centered around a Bren gun and a loader for the Bren gun, and a maneuver section centered around 7 to 8 riflemen.
Hmm.
So, and there would also be soldiers with a Piat, or a sort of late war British anti-tank weapon, soldiers with grenades.
Yeah.
The flexibility existed at the squad level, and it was commanded at the platoon level.
Yeah, it's
So the platoon was what was called the maneuver unit.
yeah.
It was the basic unit of maneuver for on the battlefield. Where World War One falls down is that is not true.
Hmm.
World War One, basic assets were allocated at the company level, and actions were commanded at the battalion level. So to create to show the difference, a section is 10 to 12 men in World War Two.
Hmm.
In World War One, a company is some 100 to 150, give or take.
Okay.
So the smallest unit in which people are thinking in World War Two is 12 men. It's a personal unit. It exists on the scale of a single human.
Hmm.
In World War One, all the maneuver element was 150 to 150 200 men, depending on the army you're in.
Yeah.
Now, where that's relevant is these 100 men would be armed with bolt action rifles.
Yeah. Not a lot of automatics in World War One.
It's not even that there's not a lot of automatics. They had, for example, portable, in the British Army at least, portable machine guns called Lewis guns. Kind of like the Russian DPR was actually based on it, but the Lewis gun had a big water jacket around it.
Yeah.
Anyway, the they didn't assign many other weapons than the rifle at the company level. So if you're going to make a realistic, and I say realistic in the loosest possible sense, World War One shooter, everybody's going to have, if you're having Britain versus Germany, everybody's going to have either a Lee Enfield or a Mauser,
Mm-hmm.
and that's that.
And
So
when you're using bolt action, any person who's played a shooter can attest that it slows down gameplay.
yeah, and a big part of the attraction of the shooter is the speed and maneuverability, the
Yeah.
running around like attacking. But here's the other point to why it doesn't work. And I'm gonna ask you a question right now that I want you to think about for a moment and then answer.
Okay.
Why do they not make first-person games set during the English Civil War, the pike and shot period, when units fought in large massed squares of men, locking pike with pike and musket with musket?
Well, my first thought is if they're using muskets, those things take like a good.
Don't even think about don't even think about the loading. Just think about how battles are fought. Just think about the way battles are organized and fought.
Well, at that point, the reason why there wouldn't be a first person shooter, because you just be a if it was a first person shooter, you'd just be another person in the crowd. Most first person shooters, you sort of become a one man super soldier, like regardless of what the game says, if you're a regular soldier or not. You're the one who
Yeah,
does everything.
and that's the key. In World War II, with the size of the maneuver units, you can pull that off convincingly. Where Private John Smith, All American,
Hmm.
can get his story told, and he can seem like a one man army because the scale of what's happening is so small and focused.
Yeah.
In the pike and shot period, you're like a dude in a crowd.
Yeah.
And this goes to one of the other things that I want to touch on. World War One combat is boring. It is astonishingly, mind-numbingly boring.
Hmm.
And the pike and shot period is a great example because if you're going to do a first-person game set in that era, if you run around, you're going to die.
Yeah.
If you run around as if you pick up your pike and you run toward the enemy,
Th-
you're going to die.
There's a reason
But
it's called No Man's Land.
it's not even that. I'm still on the pike and shot thing
Okay.
because the tactics of the period don't make for good first-person shooter mechanics. You're incentivized to do the boring thing because otherwise you're going to die.
Mm-hmm.
All the incentive drives you towards doing the boring thing, but you don't want to make a game based around doing boring things because nobody's going to buy it, or at least the
Exactly.
people who are going to buy it are like going to be very niche.
The
So
reviewers are gonna buy it, give it terrible reviews, and no one else is gonna buy it. Other
yeah,
than people who want to play it just because they heard it's a terrible game.
and World War One is much the same.
Mm-hmm.
You're not anything that you could possibly do in a World War One shooter would be disincentivized by the very setting, by the very nature of the setting. Like in World War One, it's basically when they're not actually in battle, you stick your head up and it gets blown off.
Yeah.
Like all the interesting things that happened in World War One happened behind the scenes because World War One was a war of transition. It was transitioning from the open skirt from World War One is essentially the last stage of the transition from linear Frederican and Napoleonic tactics
Mm-hmm.
through the Franco-Prussian War era, and then it's the last stage when weapons finally force a change in tactics.
Yeah.
And I mean, it wasn't a massive change. I mean, World War Two, the beginning of World War Two is where they finally make the last leap.
Mm-hmm.
The Battle of France and all that in 1939. But World War One is essentially the point where armies completely bog down because
Yeah.
this, because the tactics they were using are disincentivized by the weapons they're facing,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no way to portray that in that setting in a first-person shooter game and still have it be a fun game.
Yeah.
Um, like, it was, um, yeah, I'm trying to remember there was a game that was really awful or really unfun, but really interesting because of it. I might just be mentally making this up, but
A game
it
that
it, it,
was.
it, it would be interesting as a thought experiment and interesting as an experience, but you would never pick it up again.
Yeah.
Like this hypothetical Battlefield World War One, because I mean, do you want to play a game where you just sit in a hole and then occasionally snipe at a German across the field? No, you don't, and nobody ever will.
Well, depends if you play a camper in Call of Duty, but
Yeah.
that's essentially what they do so far. But yeah,
I mean,
I agree. If that's the entire game, it's just gonna be boring and no one's gonna want it.
mm. And um, I I think there's a way you can do it, but it's not going to be the first person shooter game that people want
Yeah.
because they're going to want a World War II style first person shooter, but you can't really do that. I think the way they could do it is to take the lead partially of Rainbow Six, partially of Rise Son of Rome,
Mm-hmm.
where they focus it on not a common soldier at all. They focus it on an officer, and they focus on the officer commanding the unit. So they because officers were on the front line during the First World War. They were
Mm-hmm.
lieutenants, captains, colonels, all on the front line carrying rifles or pistols into battle. So what they could do is essentially be able to you'd have your company split into platoons. You could mouse over or put your cursor over your company, and then say go to depression on the ground and go to that one and try and maneuver around so that you can maneuver your command section
Yeah,
onto the objective.
but that sounds
I
more
think
like an RTS rather than an FPS. So
well, yeah, I mean they could do it from a first person perspective, and it would actually be kind of interesting. but they're not going to because it's Battlefield.
Yeah.
And that's the other inherent problem.
People
As you were talking
expect
about
a certain
earlier,
thing from Battlefield.
yeah, and they can't deliver that. They're never going
No.
to be able to deliver that.
They can
So
if they want to try, they can try World War One, but we're probably gonna be able to call it right now. It's not going to work.
yeah, it's not going to work. It's not going to look or feel like World War One because World War One was an awful grinding slog of a war, and nobody came out of that happy. There's a
Yeah.
reason they called it the war to end all wars.
Yeah.
I mean, usually in a war, the victor is happy. World War One is just depressing.
Yeah.
It's a depressing slog through the worst of humanity, and there's no way to portray that in any way that is also fun. And like, there's a whole period of human history where that's the case, because essentially you're screwed. But even a multiplayer World War One game wouldn't work very well because you're screwed by your other players. Because World War One style combat requires a massive amount of cooperation.
Yeah.
In fact, World War One style combat. What do you know about how much like have you looked into like the actual tactical maneuver of World War One?
Not overly, but you said like for a multiplayer World War One game, it you'd require a lot of coordination, teamwork. There's actually I was watching a video. I'm not gonna mention any of the channel names, but they were playing a game on Steam called Verdant. It is sort of a World War One like
You mean?
multiplayer first
Yeah.
person shooter, and it's like it's this group of like four guys, and they're all talking via I think Skype,
Mhm.
and they're just working together using stuff, and they end up like just dominating because they're working as a team rather than everyone just running around randomly.
Yeah, but the thing is, actually today, interestingly enough, today is the anniversary of the 10th day of the Battle of Verdun.
Okay,
Yeah, so it's relatively topical.
yay,
Uh,
topical.
I was watching French news, the new French news coverage of the ceremonies and all that,
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen that game before, but the problem is it's exactly the thing I'm talking about. It's implemented like a World War II shooter.
Yeah,
It's like
it's
there's
not
heavy focus
true
on
World War One
automatic weapons.
shooter.
There's heavy focus. Yeah, it's a World War II shooter wearing World War One clothing.
Yeah.
Because World War One um, was the last generals' war almost. It was the last war where generals moved troops like chess pieces.
Yeah.
Because if you've ever seen battle plans for a First World War battle, they are detailed to the nth degree.
Really?
They actually, yeah, they come with objectives and they come with a map, and they'll show your company on the map, and it will tell you how far to advance, and then you will have to stop. Because if you advance further, you advance into the artillery cover that is allowing you to move up. Then you will wait. You will sit down and you will wait.
Mm-hmm.
And you will wait for that artillery cover to move up again. It's called the creeping barrage. And then you will advance into that beaten ground. And then that will happen over and over again until the artillery cover takes you onto German lines and you get in there with bayonets.
Yeah.
There was actually very little. There was actually rifle bullets were actually one of the things they shipped the fewest of to the front, because the average soldier didn't need many rifle bullets if he was attacking.
Yeah.
The attacks of World War One were almost completely done by. I mean, I'm being facetious, but the actual planned attacks of World War One were almost all done by bayonet, which might seem astonishing to modern day people consuming this kind of gaming media and gaming and how people understand games. But I mean, World War One was the last war of the bayonet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was used relatively often in the Second World War by the British, but I mean the British. Anyway, World War One is the problem with World War One is it's not a game that gels with our current sensibilities about what war is.
Yeah.
I think we need to sit down and if we make a World War One game, it's going to be an art game rather than a Battlefield style game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like probably something like an RTS.
Not even necessarily an RTS. I think the best World War One game has already been made. It's called Valiant Hearts. It's a puzzle game set in
I've
the
heard
First World
about
War.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's beautiful, glorious, gorgeous, and it captures what World War One is about: a grinding slog that ruins the best of humanity.
Yeah, that's sort of what I've heard from reviews. Like, from reviews has been it's an extremely dark game. Like, it's a game where you play it and you feel bad about playing it.
No, I wouldn't say the emotional experience I've seen people who've played it is bad. It's just kind of depressing.
Yeah,
I think puzzle I think puzzle games are actually the best way to portray World War One because they're about you either succeed first time or you bash your head against that puzzle over and over and over again until you succeed, and that's almost the perfect metaphor for what that war was about.
yeah.
Like essentially iterating through failure until you finally achieve some sort of success. I think it gives you the right feel for the conflict.
hmm And occasionally you have a country that does the impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Vimy Ridge.
Yeah, Vimy Ridge.
Hey, the
Or
Canadians kicked ass. They did what both the British and French attempting twice could not do, and the Canadians just walked up and did it in the first shot.
yeah, it was a pretty solid battle.
Oh yeah.
My favorite is still the Battle of the Marne, France's glorious moment. The 44 years of humiliation washed away in a single day.
hmm Well, it's like the only reason I know a lot more about Vimy Ridge than anything else is because that's
Canadian.
realistically the only thing I've read about World War One is I read a book on Vimy Ridge back in high school once.
Uh,
So that's
well,
about the limits of my knowledge.
the best recommendation for World War One readings: The Guns of August. Start with The Guns of August, and then if you still want to know more about World War One, to you and all our viewers out there, I recommend Hugh Strachan's superb history of the First World War. Covers the conflict from beginning to end. Lots of wonderful photographs. You can really visualize it. Masterful work of history. I used it so many times during my courses on the First World War in university. It is accessible to academic and non-academic alike. It's brilliant.
Cool.
Yeah.
One last thing I want to bring up is Minecraft movie.
I had not heard about that until this morning.
Yeah, it's sort of been, I've heard about it, and then I thought I heard it got shut down. And now apparently it's back up, and, like, they're working with Mojang to, well, I guess Mojang doesn't own it anymore.
No, Mojang owns it. Mojang is
Oh,
just owned by Microsoft.
oh yeah, but yeah, they're working with them to make sure it's, like, it fits their bill, but, like, how, it's sort of like with Telltale's Minecraft story mode. It's how, Minecraft is a game where you essentially bring whatever's in your mind to life.
Yeah,
You can't put like a story behind it, really.
or you can't put a pre-baked story behind
Yeah,
it, and
it's
that's part of the attraction of Minecraft that
there
you
is
don't
no
have a story.
story. You just do whatever you want. You can build whatever you want. You can.
Yeah, it's also especially weird they're coming out with a Minecraft movie
Yeah,
now. Yeah, at this point in time, because
uh,
there is no conceivable reason for it.
yeah. And video game movies have done so well in the past.
I mean, speaking of video game movies, when was the last time you played or thought about Minecraft?
Ah, probably like a year ago. Like I know there's still a lot of Minecraft out there, but I mean, you play it. You can only play it for like so much before it's like, well, I used up everything in my mind and
Yeah,
burning it down.
yeah, it's kind of like Lego.
Yeah,
Lego's brilliant, but
like
add
eventually, like everyone
eventually
comes back to
you
it
run
and
out of
plays a little
yeah.
more stuff, but it's like you don't sit down and play it for months upon months upon months.
Well, I mean, after you first had it, like once you've had it for a while,
Yeah,
you don't sit down and play it for months upon months upon months. It's
that's
not.
why mods are a thing, just to keep the game
Yeah,
fairly interesting.
but yeah, it's not exactly the sort of game where it's not even a public consciousness thing anymore. I
Yeah.
don't understand why. Maybe they're trying to cash in. Maybe they're trying to. God only knows. Like I'm not even going to attempt to get into Microsoft's business direction the mindset behind Microsoft's business direction.
Yeah.
But you know, yeah, why? Like no one cares.
Yeah. I mean, and that's another thing. Video game movies, they've never been overly good. Like I saw the new Hitman that just came out like fairly recently,
Yeah,
and it wasn't bad, but I mean, it's still like you're taking.
sort of a generic action movie.
Yeah, it's a generic action movie that you just made the main person the guy from Hitman. It's Agent
Yeah, that's
47.
yeah,
It
that's actually the worry about about how the new Dungeons and Dragons movie is going to be. That it's going to be just. Have you ever seen the previous Dungeons and Dragons movies?
no. I've heard of them
Oh
but
man, if you want to see Jeremy Irons embarrass himself, if you want to see Jeremy Irons embarrass himself, there's a Dungeons and Dragons I think from the '90s that's just right there.
wow. Yeah, personally, a Dungeons and Dragons movie, I just imagine some really bad CGI. Like that's the first thing that pops in my head is bad CGI.
Yeah, kind of. It kind of speaks as somebody who enjoys Dungeons and Dragons very, very much. It does speak to the aesthetic of the experience.
Hmm.
Bad CGI. Because let's be honest, everybody's thoughts are rendered in bad CGI, right?
Oh yeah. But I mean, if you're actually playing D&D, you some random stuff can happen. Like
Yeah,
I was me going back to me watching stuff on YouTube. Recently, watching a video where a dude was talking to some friends about a game of Dungeons and Dragons they were playing, and uh, like one of the regular enemies killed the final boss just
exactly.
because of the way the rolls went.
And that's and that's why that's why I think why video game movies don't. I know I'm treading briefly into like well trodden territory.
Yeah,
Why they don't work because they're not interactive, and
yeah.
you have this certain expectation of interactivity, or at least stories informed by the interactivity.
Mhm.
I think that's where the Minecraft movie is going to fall down as well.
Yeah.
It's going to be informed by do it the DIY free um,
It also
free and open ended experience of Minecraft, and it's not going to live up to that.
yeah, it also doesn't work from the other way around too. Like a lot of video games based on movies are just terrible because you're trying to make a story that's not interactive,
Yeah,
and it ends up being so linear and bland that it's like,
yeah, but I think if we bring it around and focus specifically on Minecraft for a moment,
okay,
it's because Minecraft is this free thing, like,
yeah,
and this free and accessible thing. I think that's why like Minecraft story mode isn't that interesting either. I mean, partly it's because it's developed by Telltale, and Telltale kind of sucks.
they have
I
the
mean, I
fan
know,
base, but yeah,
yeah, they have their fan base, and their fan base can like whatever they want.
yeah,
I think that's like, I think that's weird, and that they don't know what they don't know what's good for them.
mhm,
And yeah, I feel comfortable insulting the Telltale fan base because Telltale's games do not present well. It's just like it's what is it called? It's like those choose your own adventure books from when you were a kid.
oh god,
Come on, that's what it is. That's what Telltale games are. They're a choose your own adventure book in video game form.
well,
They're essentially the Western version of a
yeah,
Japanese visual novel.
yeah, you essentially think you're making choices, but they'll always end the same.
Yeah, as I said, it's a Western version of a Japanese visual novel.
Yeah,
And if you don't like visual novels, you're not going to like a Telltale game.
mhm,
And it's you can't translate that aesthetic of highly structured storytelling to a completely free into a completely ungoverned experience like Minecraft. And I think to a certain extent you have to exercise creative control and tell people no.
Yeah.
Like if I was the people in charge of Minecraft, I would just say no to a Minecraft movie. I would say no because this is antithetical to everything we've built and it won't work, and you're going to screw it up because even in proposing it, you show you don't understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, but as long as Microsoft thinks they can make some money off of it, then they're gonna
Oh yeah.
make the shit out of it.
Oh yeah. No.
They're gonna beat
Actually,
that
it's
dead
Warner Brothers
horse till
making it.
there's nothing left.
Actually, it's Warner Brothers making it.
Really?
Yeah, they're backed by Microsoft, but it's the same people. It's the same people who did the Lego Movie.
Oh god, no.
Yeah,
Like, I understand, like, there was I saw the Lego movie, I don't know if you did, but
I did.
it's,
I did.
that,
Apparently,
it did
apparently,
not live,
HBO.
in my
I've got an
opinion, did
article.
not live up to the proper hype.
Yeah, I know. Well,
Like, I know there's some people that, like, love the shit out of it, but it's like, I don't know, it, it was just, uh,
it was too. It was too much. Like it was.
yeah,
It was just too ridiculous.
yeah, too
I think.
ridiculous. The story was pretty much the
Actually,
most generic hero story you could ever get.
in fact, I actually want to pause you for a moment. I think the Lego Movie would have been more interesting, like as a movie, if they had focused instead on the sort of meta story of the child and his parent.
Yeah.
I think that would have been way more interesting. I just found an article about the Minecraft movie that explains why it's going to be ridiculous.
Oh.
It's supposed to be helmed by the same people who did the Lego Movie, and they're going to reach for the same target audience as Jurassic World.
Oh god, no.
Yeah,
That
it's
is not going to work.
yeah, it's Minecraft as ridiculous overwrought summer blockbuster. And here's what the producer says is going to is going to is part of the first movie is part of the movie's plot. Minecraft would be part of a multiverse where humans can enter that, and it will have the feel of a live action version of the Minecraft experience.
Uh, um, uh, yeah, no. Minecraft as a multiverse that people can just enter.
Yeah,
Uh, and you're gonna make it a movie, so there's gonna be no interactivity. Yeah, I don't even have to, like, try to go. I can't even find the words to try to explain how that will not work.
the idiocy is self-explanatory. It, it's like Donald Trump's foreign policy, contradictory to the nth degree.
Yeah.
It's like
If
incoherent.
anyone's ever gonna start the next World War, it's gonna be Trump.
We should best not go into that because I've got some
Yeah,
visceral
yeah,
opinions about
I know.
Trump.
Let's just drop that part of the subject right there.
Hot potato tossed out window.
Exactly.
Yeah, but yeah, there's no conceivable way this is going to turn out well. But I think, like, I can now see why they brought the Lego guy in because that he's definitely pulling from that same sort of narrative,
Mm-hmm.
narrative, that same sort of narrative thrust as the Lego movie. At the same time, he either needs to refine his idea or like not aim for a Jurassic World style summer
Yeah.
blockbuster. Because
If he's aiming for Jurassic World, it's not gonna pan out. If he's aimed instead for something like the Lego movie was, there's gonna be a market of people who will go watch it. Personally, I probably won't, but there's gonna be a group of people who will watch it.
that's because like you know Minecraft, you know the backstory.
Mm-hmm.
You're I guess industry aware.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and apparently the movie is also going to contain insight into future updates for Minecraft.
Oh no.
Yeah, I know it's already going down the toilet.
If you
So I'm
want,
just gonna
if you want
continue
an
talking.
idea of future updates for Minecraft, look at the list of mods still available. Because that's all the updates have been recently. It's just they've made mods part of the regular game,
Yeah. Well,
like certain
mod
mods.
looks good.
So
We'll put
you
that
can
in. That mod
look
looks
at the
good. We'll
list
put
of mods and pick some, and some might be in it, some might not.
yeah. It's gonna be. But here's the thing: no matter what we say, they're gonna make it. People
Yep.
are gonna buy it, and it's gonna be stupid.
Yeah.
Because that's how the world works.
Yep.
And I think with that, we can definitely say that the chicken has walked away.
Oh yeah.
Good, everybody.
See ya.
You have listened to the Walking Chicken podcast.